Hey, let's go back to our guest line. Let's go down to Atlanta. Let's bring in Jay Holgate of the SECsportsReport.com. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Ron.
Hey, Jay, in the few minutes that we have with you, any surprises today as far as in the Southeastern Conference?
I think just the fact that the SEC did so strong today it shouldn't be a big surprise, but it is always a surprise. You got Florida, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee all in the top 10. The fans get all over these rankings. I don't think the coaches, they cover it quite as close. They like to be up there high, but we don't really know. David Pollock and David Green, they were both 3-star players. They ended up playing in the pros, so it's not completely scientific. And so we can. I think if you sign a top 20, 25 class, I think you're pretty good. The top five is usually pretty strong players, and we've seen that consistently out of Florida. So we know that Florida is going to continue to sign great players for some time. Now, Ron, I will tell you, and your guest last night kind of alluded to it. I was surprised that Georgia finished out at number 16. Derek Dooley kind of came down into Georgia and snagged a couple of guys, and I think Florida State grabbed one of them too. And they had guys that had been telling them for months that they were 100% Georgia Bulldogs, and at the last minute just pulled out. And the reality is, if it would have happened a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. When it happens 48 hours before signing day, it kind of draws a lot of attention, maybe more so than it needs to. But I think a lot of Georgia fans, if anybody's disappointed today, it's going to be the Georgia Bulldogs, because I think that they feel like they should be a top 5 program year in and year out, and they between Willie Martinez and 2 other assistants getting fired, and it taking a little while to hire in a defensive coordinator, I just think that they had some holes to fill there, and they weren't able to do it, and it kind of showed itself today.
Yeah, and we look over there at Florida, 28 commitments. Their average was 3.89. And they had 12 of the top 100 players, according to Scouts. So
yeah,
that's unbelievable. They had, 12% of their players were top 100 players. They had 5-star and 16 4-star players.
Man, Ron, I think what happens is a lot of those players, they started being serious about Florida last year after Florida won the national championship. So, they're getting groomed for a whole year. With Florida winning the national championship last year, they get a whole year of just Florida information, and they played pretty well this year too, going into the SEC game undefeated, SEC championship. So I think that's why a lot of those kids, they were just able to get such top talent. And it'll probably be the same way for Alabama next year.
Yeah, was you a little surprised that South Carolina didn't move up any more than they did? They actually got 2 or 3 additional players on top of that.
Well, South Carolina finished out at number 25, and that's I looked at it about an hour ago. They finished out at number 25, and I thought that's about right for them.
Okay, now that's in Rivals, right?
Yeah, that's in Rivals. That's pretty much who I follow. The one kid, the wide receiver that decided he would go to North Carolina, he apparently called up Steve Spurrier Jr. this morning or late last night and told him that he was going to go to North Carolina. That kind of caught them by surprise, but they had a feeling all along that the guy was not completely committed. But that took some points off the board for the Gamecocks. They recovered pretty quickly on that, but I think they're only going to end up signing 23, and I think they actually had room for 2 more. So they may still end up signing some more people before the month's out.
Okay, so according to Rivals, they were 25th. Okay.
See, what Auburn was able to do was they enrolled those kids in December, and 5 of those kids on their list, they're going against last year's class. So, so right off the bat, they're able to sign a big class, and the last or 5 of those guys are already enrolled, and they're going against the 2009 class. So it brings them down to 27. They might gray shirt somebody. You got to be near genius to figure out how to make all this stuff work, but these coaches, they'll make it work.
Okay. Also, in the SEC, like you say, Tennessee come in. They're number 9. We'll do rivals since that's who you go with. They were number 9 in rivals. LSU was number 6. Now, I think LSU, they lost several players in the last couple of days. And what about Tennessee? How did they do?
Well, I think Tennessee did great. I really do. I think that I think Dooley came in there, assembled a group of coaches, and they just went after it hard. They did come down here to Georgia and snag a couple from Mark Richt's group, and they pretty much held their own with the kids that they got from Lane Kiffin. Right after Lane Kiffin announced that he was leaving, 5 kids immediately said they weren't going. But after that, they pretty much held those guys. And Lane Kiffin, he was only able to get 1 kid off of that Tennessee roster, some kid out of Georgia, a wide receiver, and that's a miracle in itself, because Lane Kiffin has been calling these kids for the last 3 days like crazy trying to get them. I know some Tennessee alumni told me they are very upset about that him and Orgeron were going really hard after Tennessee recruits. But I think that Derek Dooley did a good job. He held the guys that he needed to hold on to, and I just think that he went after kids that were interested in Tennessee that may not have been interested in Lane Kiffin. And for them to finish out top 10 is huge. It's hard to pull this stuff off when you got a coaching change like that at the end of the year. Right after the season, those guys in less than a month, they really had to just bust it and get some guys in there. And they may assign some guys that they don't really know that much about, but they're just going on other people's rankings of them. So I think they did a good job, and hats off to Tennessee.
Okay, in the last 2 minutes that we have here, I guess most of our listeners are either South Carolina or Georgia fans in the SEC. So if we'll just tell me, take about a minute for each of them, and tell me how you think each school did.
Well, I think both schools did not meet their expectations. I do believe South Carolina was really hoping to be top 15. A couple of players got out of the state. That John Fulton went to Alabama. I think that South Carolina had him down on the board as a lock. They just thought they were going to get him. I think overall, I've heard what Spurrier said earlier today. I think he said that they basically met their needs. So sometimes you do have to take a step back, and it's not all about the 5 stars and the 4 stars and the biggest recruits. It's about filling needs. They got some defensive backs. They got some wide receivers. They got 3 slot players that are going to be great for them. I think they feel good about the 2 quarterbacks they got, which they needed to do. They had to get Marcus Lattimore. That was a must for them. They got that. So all in all, they should be happy. For Georgia, I think they're kind of in the same situation. I think they needed to fill some positions. If you look at that current Georgia roster, there's more talent on that team than most of the teams in the country. So they could have a year that wasn't top 10 and live. And so they got several quarterbacks from last year's staff. They got plenty of talent on that team. It's not going to – a number 16 ranking is not going to hurt them. I think Georgia's in a good position. I just think that the fans are a little bit down. But all in all, I think it was a good day. And I think in another month or a couple months, once spring training starts, this will all be over and they won't be thinking about it. And they'll just be glad to see these kids out there competing. And they'll both be top 20 teams next year.
Okay, that sounds good. Listen, Jay, I appreciate you being with us tonight, and we're looking forward to talking to you at a regular time next week.
All right, man. Sounds great, Ron.
Take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Robert Thorman-Craig of TheClemsonInsider.com. You're listening to the Sports page right here on WRIX 103.1 FM. National Signing